Welcome to the Nexus Life podcast series, where members of Nexus Chambers discuss all things law. My name is Yimi Yangye. I am a practicing barrister and have been practicing for 15 years. I practice in the area of crime, inquest and inquiries, public law, and prison law. The title of today's podcast is How to Manage Your Choices in Hospital. And with me is Katie William House, another member of Chambers. Hello, Katie.
Hello, Yimi.
How are you today?
I'm fine.
Excellent. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name's Katie Williams House, and as Yimi has explained, I'm another member of Nexus Chambers. I specialise in family law, but I also do court of protection work. I do general common law. I do some education work, and I also do a bit of crime, normally prosecution though.
It's right to say that neither of us are recording this from Chambers. We are both at home during the current crisis and working from home. So our listeners should not be surprised if they hear perhaps vehicle movements coming from the outside of our home.
Indeed, and any stray children running around. So hopefully I've sorted that out too.
Thank you, Katie. So why have you chosen to talk to us about this topic today?
I was reading the Sunday Times back in April on I think it was the 5th of April, and there was a letter sent in from healthcare professionals saying that during this time that we're all under with lockdown, that patients were coming in who were not able to communicate because of being very short of breath, not being able to breathe, and because they didn't have their loved ones with them. There was a great difficulty in trying to work out what sort of treatment, not only to give them, but if they wanted to refuse treatment. And therefore, there was a request from medical practitioners across the board that people should really think about perhaps making a living will. And that's where a person wants to refuse treatment. And it's also where a person doesn't have the ability to make decisions or be able to communicate decisions. And that's where a living will, or what I would call an advanced decision, would be of great benefit to them.
Is there another name for a living will?
Yes. So the legal term is advanced decision, and that's from the Mental Capacity Act in 2005. A lot of hospital staff will call it an advanced directive, and a lot of charities will call it a living will. So it's got a number of different terms, but actually the legal term is advanced decision.
And how does one go about making an advanced decision?
Right. So like anything, there's like criteria for making an advanced decision. Just to be absolutely clear, this is a denial of treatment or a refusal of treatment rather than a request for treatment. So you've got to be very clear about that. Saying that, there's 4 different criteria. You've got to be over the age of 18, so to be an adult. You've also got to have the capacity to make an advanced decision. Thirdly, you've got to be specific. It's not good enough, and it's specific about the treatment that you could be receiving. So it's not good enough to be general, sweeping across the board. That's not going to help medical staff. For an advanced decision to work really well and be an advocate for you when you can't be an advocate for yourself, you need to be specific. So you've got to have some idea of what you might be going in for. It's a bit of pre-planning, really. And finally, the last criteria is to ensure that your advanced decision is in writing. So that means it's got to be written down, it's got to be signed by yourself, it's got to be dated, and it's got to be witnessed by someone. And that person should really be not your spouse. It shouldn't be your general practitioner because they're connected to your healthcare. And it shouldn't be someone who might be a main beneficiary in your estate should you pass away. So it's really someone like an extended member of the family. It could be a another doctor in your GP practice. It's a sort of person you'd approach to witness your passport, if I could put it that way. So not close members of your family.
Are there any other alternatives to an advanced decision?
Yes, there are. So the other alternative, but this takes a bit of planning, is a lasting power of attorney for health and welfare. That's when perhaps you have an idea that you might end up lacking capacity at some point in the future. Normally it's your foreseeable future, but you can take those steps. It's normally someone that you've approached, you've spoken to them about it. It could be a close family member, it could be your spouse at this point, or it could be a good friend, someone that you trust. And then you can set up a lasting power of attorney using a government website that's available, or you can go and see a solicitor, take some legal advice about it. But what you must do, and for it to be valid, is to register it at the Office of Public Guardianship. So, of the Public Guardian, I should say, sorry. So you must have it registered there. And then after it's been registered and you've been notified, then it becomes valid. Of course, that takes a bit of pre-planning. So it's really thinking about, should you get into trouble now? It's making these sort of decisions now, and that's why I'm talking about it today.
In the current pandemic, who should be thinking about writing an advanced decision or making a lasting power of attorney?
It's anyone who thinks they should be making a will. So lots of us of a certain age, or even before then, if you've got assets, you would naturally make a will. Well, you've got to think of your body and yourself as an asset, and that's why they call it the living will. So it's when you think it's right. So if you've made a will, I would say make a living will or an advanced decision.
And how do the hospital or medical professionals become aware that there is a living will in place?
Well, that's an excellent question, Yimi. This is all about communication. So there's no point making an advanced decision and tucking it away in a safe because it won't be found. You need to discuss this. Discuss it with your GP. Discuss it with close family members. If you create an advanced decision statement, then for goodness sake, communicate that and perhaps make some copies of it. Give one copy to your GP, give a copy to a close family member or a very good friend. And indeed, if you can, take one with you to the hospital. I know sometimes things happen very quickly, but if you can pre-plan that, that would be incredibly useful.
What happens if there is a disagreement between the medical professions in terms of treatment and, say, your family members who are aware that this advanced decision is in place?
Well, so if there is a concern, so if your family members, say, are supportive of your advanced decision, but there's a concern from medical practitioners, then it may be that there's a number of stages you can go through. So first of all, what you can look at having, your family members could, or your good friends, could look at having a second opinion. So not just relying on what one set of doctors saying, but saying, actually, we need someone else to have a look at this. If there's no agreement after that, then you can ask for an advocate to come along who will discuss the matter with the medical practitioners and with your family members or good friend and see if an agreement can be reached. Now, an advocate can't make decisions about treatment or care, but the decision maker, normally the hospital staff, must consider any information that the advocate gives them. Another route that can be taken is mediation. So, and that's where all parties can come together, a mediator can get involved and to see if there can be some resolution between the concerned loved members and the hospital staff. And finally, if there isn't, if mediation can't work, then the ultimate option is actually to go and seek assistance from the Court of Protection. And the Court of Protection is there to protect people's welfare and to protect their assets when they are incapable of making those decisions themselves. But that is obviously a final solution. If you can avoid getting there, then you should do so. Just adding in at this point, I've talked about lasting power of attorneys. So when you make a lasting power of attorney, your attorney will take on your voice, will advocate for you. You can still make an advance decision, and the advance decision would trump what the advocate has to say. However, you can still change your mind while you're able to communicate and you have the ability to make decisions. You can change your mind about your advance decision at any time. So the key thing here is to communicate and to be clear about the sort of treatment you are refusing. So you're fully informed, not only outside hospital, but once you get into hospital. So there are natural breaks along the way that should you change your mind, you can change your mind. It doesn't mean that you're locked in. But if you choose to stand by your advance decision, then taking all those first steps that I talked about will mean that your advance decision is legally valid.
Well, thank you, Katie. Are there resources out there that our listeners can tap into in order to get more information about making an advance decision or a lasting power of attorney?
Yes. So just dealing with lasting power of attorneys, if I might first. I mentioned the government website. It's the UK government website. It's excellent. If you go to www.gov.uk/power of attorney/register, it takes you through all the steps. If you feel you need a bit more advice, then it's always open to you to go and seek some legal advice that might be of great assistance to you. It's always worth talking things through with your GP as well, or indeed close family members. But that's a website that's incredibly useful. You can download documents and they tell you how to register at the Office of Public Guardian.
Right.
So that's incredibly useful. If you want to make an advanced decision, actually just look on the internet. If you look at mydecisions.org.uk, there's a template for making what they call a living will. They do talk about advanced decisions, and they do talk about lasting power of attorneys as well. So that's all very useful information. However, I would always advise that if you are making a very serious decision, take a lot of advice. Just don't rely on one source. And if you're looking for legal advice, then it's always worth looking at a government website or actually going to seek some legal advice.
Well, thank you, Katie, for this relevant and thoughtful discussion. And is there anywhere our listeners could get in touch with you?
Yes. If you want to contact me, you can contact me through my chambers, which is info@nexuschambers.com. And my personal business email address is katie.williams-house@nexuschambers.com.